and it was a huge failure. I had a really difficult time learning how to grow flowers. I made every mistake in the book, and after like 2 or 3 years, I finally started figuring it out.
Welcome to The Art of Gardening. I'm your host, Melissa Lallo-Johnson, and I am thrilled to have one of my very dear hydrangea loving friends, Kelly Lehman from Cranberry Fields, here with me today. Thanks so much for joining me, Kelly. Welcome.
Oh, so excited to be here. You know, I love following you. I always reach out and tell you, I love that video. That one was amazing. I've always been such a fan. So I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yes. And thank you. And likewise to you. Kelly is a Cranberry Fields. Can you tell us about Cranberry Fields and tell us about your beautiful hydrangea farm?
Oh, sure. So I live on a farm in the town of Cranberry, New Jersey. And so my husband came up with the name. When we named our farm, let's call it Cranberry Fields. And we put in a flower farm about maybe 10 or 12 years ago. And it was a huge failure. I had a really difficult time learning how to grow flowers. I made every mistake in the book. And after like 2 or 3 years, I finally started figuring it out. I started figuring out that hydrangeas are one of the easiest flowers to grow, as well as sunflowers and peonies. And I started to learn how to grow like the no-brainer flowers, like the ones that are super easy, the ones that thrive on neglect. And so then we just started growing these beautiful hydrangeas, peonies, sunflowers, and we turned it into a flower business. And then we started doing like a Flowers of the Month club, and then we were doing weddings, and then we were doing funerals, like a full-blown florist. And, we were loving it. It was great. And we live on the farm with our 4 kids and our Bernese mountain dog, Lucy, who's in like all of our YouTube videos. And then COVID hit. And of course, no one's ordering flowers. No one's sending flowers. You can't even find flowers during COVID because nobody's shipping. And everything just kind of started tanking. But what was interesting was I had just a few videos that I had put on YouTube way back in maybe like 2018. And I just wanted to put why aren't my hydrangeas blooming? How to plant sunflowers. And I did that because I wanted to promote my flower business. Because we were shipping our flowers nationwide at that point in these adorable like burlap wrap bouquets. We were shipping, to most of the states. And so the idea was, let's try to get more people to buy our bouquets. Let's put a couple how-to videos there. So I upload the videos and they tank. There's crickets. Nobody's watching them. I think there's maybe like 2 people that see them over the course of like 6 months. And I was like, well, that was a huge failure. But what happened was when COVID hit, all of a sudden those videos, even though they were like 2 years old, started taking off. And then all of a sudden we had like 1 million views on my video, how to get more blooms from your hydrangea. And then I was like, wait a minute, what is this? And then all of a sudden you start working with Google AdSense and YouTube, and you start realizing that there's like, a way to monetize these videos. And then, I'm sitting back in my house, instead of being miserable, I'm kind of like, no, wait a minute, this is a whole different business. Let's dive in. So I started taking courses, YouTube courses. I'm like the world's oldest YouTuber. And and now we are like full-time influencers on YouTube and TikTok and, Instagram and Pinterest. And, we just like throw all these videos out everywhere to help people grow flowers all around the world. And now that's like my mission, like to help people grow easy to grow flowers in their own backyards without all the fuss, without all the chemicals, without all the futzing. So that's the new mission. And I have to say, who knew? Like, who would have ever imagined this was going to be a thing 10 years ago?
Well, it's absolutely incredible. I love your page and her page on Instagram, and you'll have to run us down through the others, but it's Cranbury, right? Cranberry.
Like my cranberry, exactly. So not the fruit, but like that weird Bury. So that's the Instagram page.
Fields. Yep. And then I did notice, I saw a post the other day that on your YouTube page, you have hit the milestone of 6,500,000 views, which is incredible. So clearly you're doing something right. It's incredible. So tell me about your farm. How many acres is your farm on?
So the property itself is on about 8 acres. And, the farms, we grow all around the property. So like we've got like pine trees that are surrounding the outside of the farm. We use those for our centerpieces for Christmas. We've got the peonies that come up in May, and when the peonies drop down, then the hydrangeas start blooming. So there's a constant bloom. We've got like magnolia trees in front of the house. That's literally like my house landscaping that we're cutting from. So like sometimes my husband Sheldon comes out, he's like, why does the magnolia tree look like it's wonky? I'm like, well, we had a funeral and he's like, you gotta leave the landscaping alone. I'm like, you know what? You can't. Like, as a gardener, when you are out there and like you're creating stuff, you're like, oh, I have to use that magnolia bloom. Like, it's spectacular. And so we basically farm. Like, we've got rows and fields and annuals, and we've got a secret garden. And I really like the idea, maybe because I'm a very lazy person. I want the perennials because they come back every year. I want the ones that are no fuss. I don't want this. I'm like the only gardener that doesn't want a garden. Like, I don't want to be out there 24/7 weeding and pruning. So I find the things that literally you put them in the ground, and like peonies, they thrive on neglect. The more I ignore them, the more beautiful they come back every year. And I think that it's really like fulfilling for me to teach people that. I'm like, guys, I've got like the best kept secret. Put in peonies, put in hydrangeas, put in like these perennials that, they don't want you to fuss over them. They just want to give you these beautiful flowers. And so that's basically what comes up around the farm. Is majority is hydrangeas, like every hydrangea known to man.
Yeah, that's one of my next questions. How many varieties do you have, do you think?
Oh, I don't even know. Maybe 30, 25, 30.
Wow.
Proven winners.
And how many hydrangeas do you think you have on the property?
Hundreds.
If you had to guess.
I can't even, maybe 200.
Wow.
Maybe 300. And it's great because proven winners that I know that you work with them too. They're great because they're always coming up with brand new varieties, and with, influencers. And I know that you get them too. They'll be like, hey, do you want to try this out? And my email is always back to them. Send me as many as you possibly can, and I will try them out. And then, we love telling people the ones that we love, the ones that work best. And so that's so great because there's constantly, I know you and I were saying, like, we just got our proven winners. We got 2 sent this week. And
yes,
so we'll put
PW Color Choice. They are very good to us. And we actually we got our 2 brand new flowers. Why don't you go over yours? And I've got mine here too, so we can kind of compare. Because one thing that we want to note, the PW Color Choice flowers are fantastic. They ship very, very well. They send very, very healthy, well leafed out plants that are ready to thrive. So why don't you give us a rundown of what you have and we'll compare.
Well, this one's great. This one was called Let's Dance Skyview. And I know a lot of like my Flower Tribe members have said, hey, can you recommend smaller, like more compact versions of the hydrangea? Because a lot of the hydrangeas are gigantic. Like, I've got limelight hydrangeas that are like 30 feet tall. I mean, they are just like massive, and I love them. If anyone's just getting into the hydrangea game, limelight hydrangea, I think, is the way to go, because they literally, like, you cannot kill this plant. Like, you can grow it in super hot temperatures, super cold temperatures. But people are like, well, I'm watching the video and I love it. It's so pretty, but I don't have room in my landscaping for a 30-foot hydrangea. So this one that they sent is Let's Dance Skyview. It gets between 2 to 3 feet tall and 2 to 4 feet wide. So, if it stays on the smaller side, like 2 to 3 feet, it's it's a much more compact size. And it came, which I love, it came out of the box. So like Proven Winners, what they'll do is they'll ship us, in boxes, these hydrangeas. This is what it looked like coming out of the box. Like, I literally just did an unboxing yesterday. I mean, it's this lush, gorgeous, like, it's not spindly. I know a lot of times when growers would ship in the past, I would get these. It was literally like a Halloween tree with like one leaf on it, like the Charlie Brown Christmas tree. And then you'd kind of hope and pray that you'd get it to bloom. But these guys are coming out as if you would buy them from your local garden center that way. And so you have one.
I have a bloom. I have a bloom on mine. So let me show you. This is what was sent to me. And so here's the plant. And then look at that bloom. I'm getting water everywhere.
That's
but
like
look
crazy.
pretty.
Bloom on there.
And
right?
it's dry. I
Totally
mean, this
dry.
is dried. So like I could cut this off right now. And one thing our friends need to understand is that a lot of these variety of hydrangea, you can cut them when they are fully done blooming and keep them the exact same color. They're just wonderful, wonderful flowers to use. I love using them in the dried flower arrangements and live flower arrangements. I mean, clearly they're just a huge winner. I mean, look how gorgeous that is.
Beautiful. It's like the grandmother antique. And it's so funny that you said that because I wanted to show you. These are like a whole bunch of those mop head hydrangeas. I cut these 2 months ago.
Get out.
And
look how big that is.
I mean, come on. Like, this is like in the kitchen 2 months. And this is I'm going to have this as a flower arrangement in my home for
gorgeous.
like the next year. And what's great about this is, I mean, from far, like when you walk into the kitchen, it looks like they're fresh blue hydrangeas. When you get closer to it, you kind of realize that they're dry, but they're still beautiful. But the trick is in, say, like right now we're in September, like come January, the color will fade, especially if it's in front of sunlight. So if you want to keep your hydrangeas looking great, and not have that color fade, keep them out of sunlight. But if they do fade, there's something called floral spray paint. And so it's like a florist power tip. So like you can get it at like Michael's, AC Moore. I'll try to put a link in one of my Amazon shop pages if we're going to have the links later on. And then you basically just spray it. It's like, it's not clearly spray paint. It's florist spray paint. You give it a shot of blue and it's bright blue again. So that's like amazing. A really fun, like, florist power tip. Yeah, but I agree with you. So yeah, but I do love, getting the proven winners flowers because they're always just like lush and gorgeous. And the same thing, I've got an arrangement here, like 90% of these are dried hydrangeas. I'm going to try to pull back a bit so you can see them, but they are crispy. Like they are literally crispy, but they look fresh because we mix them with the sunflowers that are fresh. So if you can mix some of your dry hydrangeas,
that's beautiful.
And if you mix them with fresh flowers, like it's an illusion. Like your mind sees a vase full of fresh flowers. But meanwhile, I always tell my customers, hey, we're delivering this to you today. In about a week or like 8 days, pluck out all the fresh ones that faded, and you're going to have a dried flower arrangement for the rest of the year. Yeah. I mean, like it's such a bargain. It's like, are you kidding me? Like,
Or I love to use them too. And so in my master bathroom, there's no windows. So I, at this time of year, will take, I go to thrift stores and places like that to find like, I'm always looking for like silver pitchers, that kind of thing. And so I'll load up on those kind of things. And then right now go out and cut and just make these huge hydrangea, which I'll have them insert a clip for everybody to see, but I'll make these huge arrangements right now and then just put them in areas like that. That hydrangea that's in my bathroom, I cut 3 years ago and it's still green. Wow. And it's beautiful. It's really, really beautiful. So
the whole room, like, it gives the illusion of being outside, even though there's no windows.
And it changes everything.
I wanted to show you, I have this by my kitchen, even when I'm outside cutting. And like, how like sometimes you have like a little tiny straggler bloom, or it's kind of like the wayward bloom, this little tiny, I have this by my kitchen window that I love. And it's basically just 3 bud vases. And these are the guys that normally you would throw out.
Yeah.
So I've got just tiny, tiny blooms in 3 little, they're like the little tiny jars. I mean, maybe from the dollar store or whatever. And they make me so happy. I'm doing my dishes and I'm looking down at this cute little 3 bloom bud vase. And it's just making my day. I mean, it sounds so simple and so silly, but it works. And so, so get little bud vases. And like you said, put them in your bathroom, put them in your kitchen, and just take those wayward blooms, especially when they're dry and you have them all year.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then also to your point, if you look on my highlights in my Instagram and go under weddings, I did 2 weddings where 80% of the flowers were hydrangea. And one I did a live wedding. So the one last year was live. And then 2 years ago, that entire wedding was completely done with dried flowers. Or dried hydrangea. So if you're, if you're trying to plan a wedding and you're on a budget and you've got access to the hydrangea, all of the things from that wedding were primarily clipped, like you said, right out of the yard, to be able to create an entire wedding.
Were they like like the Incredibles or the Limelights? What kind did you use?
The Limelights, primarily Limelights. But what I had done was I started cutting them as soon as and this is what I think the big trick is. And tell me if you've got anything that's more of like surefire thing, but I will start clipping them like once they're completely leafed out and they've been open for maybe a week or two, then I'll start cutting them and bringing them inside and giving them a test. If they start to shrivel up after a week, then I know they're not ready. But as soon as I do, when I'm doing that every single week and making fresh, and all of a sudden they start to get a little crinkly and crunchy and they hold their form, then that's when I know it's time. So then I'll go out and I'll start, like what you said, all the randos that are kind of hanging out over and doing this and that, I'll start cutting everything and then just bringing it in the house and putting them either, I mean, I don't even at that point have to hang them upside down. I just can throw them in an empty vase and just let them dry.
Let you shade them dry, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I usually use my basement.
Yeah, basement's the best because it's dark and it's cool. So I find that if they're not fully dried and they're in the sunlight and it's hot, they'll do that funky flopping thing. But here's, and to your point, I love this. I find that when the limelights first start to bloom, and if I cut them too soon, they will flop. They're like white and creamy and gorgeousy, and I'll put them in a vase, and I'll put them, and here's the reason why. I think it's because, and this is so unscientific, and of course somebody might call me out on it, but this is what I think, so very unscientific.
Go ahead. I want to hear your science.
Yeah, this is my science. This is like Kelly Lehman science, which absolutely means nothing in the real world. I think when the blooms are totally mature like this, like they're all blown out, and when you get to the tip, they're blown out too, and they start to turn like this green, then they're good to go. Because I actually have one here that I'm going to ruin this entire arrangement, but I got to show you this. This one is like one of the fresh blooms we're talking about. And if you can see, these guys aren't opened up quite as much. They're not full blown open. I know it's kind of hard to see in the camera. And I know some people are listening to this, so sorry about that. Let me just explain it. The ones on the top are not full blown open. They look like little tiny balls. So they're not quite mature. These are the ones that will flop in the vase. So I think the key, especially with the limelights, and even with like the mop heads, I think if you can wait until when you touch them, they actually make almost like a little crunchy sound, then you're golden. Like you're done. Like that's the best kept secret to use it. And I love that you use them in the wedding, because I have to say, those of you that are planning weddings and you're thinking of using hydrangeas are notorious for flopping. They will flop on you. You will have 200 hydrangeas that are gorgeous, and 30 of them will flop on you out of the blue because they have trouble a lot of times with the clogging of the stem. There's like an actual, I don't know if it's scabs, but for some reason, fresh hydrangeas that are not dry, that are, in that poofy, gorgeousy stage, they are notorious for just clogging up. So some people actually, a lot of florists will do this. They'll take the fresh hydrangeas and they'll cut them, if somebody wants fresh, they don't want dry, and they'll dip them in alum powder, which is a pickling spice. So you can go to like ShopRite, any of your store, and if you dip it in the alum powder, it actually helps to like loosen up the waterways in that stem, and it will help that hydrangea not to clog. But if you have the choice, if you're doing an event, birthday, wedding, funeral, if you have the choice between using like a gorgeous dried one or the fresh, I would definitely go with the dried, because another thing, a lot of people like to put the hydrangeas in the Oasis, the fresh Oasis foam, and it looks gorgeous. And for the most part, you can do this for the wedding. I've been to a load of weddings where they're beautiful. But every now and then I'll be at a wedding and you'll see this 25 beautiful hydrangeas. 6 of them have flopped in the Oasis foam because it got clogged up. So it's a real hit or miss. It's a real hit or miss with the fresh ones.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And, even taking us in further beyond that. So when, one of the things that I also fell in love with, I know you do too, is the winter interest that they provide. I mean, they're just literally year around. I mean, I keep the heads on mine all the way through really February. I mean, I start trimming the end of February. But for the most part, I mean, all the way through December, they're beautiful. They still hold the color.
Snow on top of it? Yeah, it's like another bloom when the snow hits the top of the dried ones. Yeah. And I think it protects the wildlife too. I think you've got like some little critters in there, and it kind of, and also a lot of people think that, like when you've got some of like the Nikos or some of like those mop heads that come in on that old, I actually have a stem. I wanted to show you this. Some people think that those dried flower heads provide protection for the new blooms that are going to be coming out in summer. So let me just show you what that kind of looks like. I got all my little gizmagoos here. So like this is like a mop head. So next year's flowers actually look like this right now. I'm going to get in here a little close to the screen. Those of you that can't see this, I've got an old wood stem from a mop head, and I've got a little tiny green nub coming from like the first or second set of leaflets. This is next year's flower. So this is one of the reasons why I always tell people, do not cut back your hydrangeas in fall, especially your mop heads, because a lot of people are like, well, my neighbors, they all cut them back. They cleaned up their yard. They're literally cutting off next year's blooms if they cut these back now, if it's on like a mop head hydrangea or like one of those, like a Nico or, one of those that comes in like that. Or like even, like this Let's Dance Sky. These are rebloomers. So that means they're going to be coming in on that old wood. It's a little bit different, not to get like too far off the topic, but if you have like limelight hydrangeas and Incredible, these all come in on like fresh growth in like springtime. So you don't really have to worry too much about that. The best bet, if you are going to prune the limelights or the Annabelles or the Incredibles, do that, like you said, at the end of winter or early spring. If you have to, another best kept secret, I never prune back my hydrangeas. Like I shouldn't say never because never is not a good word to use. 90% of the time, I don't prune back any of my hydrangeas, and they all come in gorgeous and spectacular. But I especially don't prune.
I wanted to make note too, because so I have an installation that I did for a friend of mine, and she wanted the limelights across the entire front porch of the house, the front.
Nice.
But she didn't want them to block the view from the windows, but she didn't want the dwarf hydrangea or, the little limes. She wanted the big. So we cut her hydrangea back. I mean, they go back to about 12 inches every year. And now they're going in their 4th or 5th year. They are absolutely stunning. They grow at that, once they're cut down to that 12 inches, which a lot of people, when they are giving the advice about pruning, they'll say, oh, well, don't trim more than a third. Don't do this and that.
Yeah.
They're so tough. Going back to 12 inches when they're 4 or 5 feet high in the season, they don't mind it. I mean, and then they come back in, and then the branches, because they're newer branches. That is one thing I learned here. The hydrangea that are placed where there's a little bit of a breeze, where the branching can kind of hit the wind and grow stronger, just like a tree, right? When the tree's swaying, it's building the trunk. Those hydrangea hold up much better and keep their form much better than the ones that are against the house, where they might not have as much airflow and as much bending.
They're kind of stifled. Yeah, there's no place to go. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Wow, that's very cool. I have to say, I feel like you can't, it's very hard to kill a limelight hydrangea. Like
I agree. I love it.
Just tough. Yeah. Wow.
Well, let's go through, because we're coming up. I knew this was going to happen. We're coming up close on time already. But let's go through. I wanted to go through some of your most asked questions and see what the answers would be to those. So number one is, why aren't my hydrangea blooming?
Right. So I made a video on this on my YouTube channel is called Kelly Lehman, and that's one of those, like the videos that most people watch. So I'm going to give you my top tips right now, but know that you can also kind of see them more step by step on that video. But one of the number one reasons why people don't have blooms is because of that pruning it back at the wrong time. So once again, people will have hydrangeas that are coming in on, from like last year's growth. So in springtime, this, hydrangea will have had all these beautiful blooms coming out. But if you had pruned this back in winter, if you had cut this back in winter or spring or fall, you literally, just took off all of that season's blooms on like some of those mop head hydrangeas. So that's probably like the number one. The number two reason is people over fertilize. So like they're trying to help their hydrangea, and my mother-in-law, I love her. She keeps saying, I've given this plant everything. I've given it so much fertilizer. I'm ready to throw it at it. I'm like, you over fertilize it. So what happens is a lot of times, especially people will put like fertilizers that are high in nitrogen, and a plant that has a lot of nitrogen in it, a lot of times will look like this during like the bloom season. And the reason it looks like this is because nitrogen promotes green, healthy, strong leaves. And so the plant is actually so happy. It's like, you know what? Forget about the blooms. I've got so many green leaves, and I'm not even going to go into bloom at this point. So it's going to concentrate on forming those green leaves, and it's not going to concentrate on the flowers. And when you fertilize your lawn, if you look at like a lawn fertilizing formula, it's super, super high in nitrogen. And a lot of times when it rains, you get the runoff of your lawn fertilizer that runs into your garden beds. And then all of a sudden your hydrangeas have all this packed nitrogen all around them. And once again, they're probably going to give you this healthy green leaf, but no blooms. So if you're having trouble with the blooming, you can take like a soil sample just to see what, everything looks like, what the soil looks like, and the opposite is true too. You might need certain fertilizers, like your soil might be depleted of some nutrients. So take a soil sample test. A lot of times you could just look at, like the extensions of like here in New Jersey, we have I think Rutgers has an extension, like a cooperative extension. And you can just Google soil sample tests in my state. And this map will populate, you put in your zip code and it will tell you where you can, send these soil samples. And just go to your local garden center. Sometimes they just have the kits and you can find out what your nutrients look like. But another reason why they don't bloom is too much water. Like a lot of times people will see their hydrangeas and the leaves look like they're wilting, and the blooms look like they're wilting in midday. And sometimes it's not because the plant's dehydrated. It's something called flagging. So a lot of times in midday in the summer, your plant just gets kind of exhausted from the heat. And it's not because it needs water. It just gets a little a little bit dehydrated, a little deflated. And if you wait until the afternoon and that plant perks back up by dusk, clearly don't water it. But a lot of people are trying to help their plants, so they see it looks deflated. They water it, and to the point where they give it root rot at the roots, and then the plant actually, winds up dying because they overwatered it.
Sure.
So that's the other thing, yeah. And then you can underwater it, which would be, the opposite of that, which of course the plant's going to die because you didn't put enough. And I would say do the knuckle test. If you're not sure if your plant needs water, especially hydrangeas, dig your finger into the soil at the base of the plant, go to your second knuckle. If you pull your finger out and it's dry, give that hydrangea a shot of water at the base. And if it's moist, leave it alone because it has enough water and you don't want to drown it. So, too much water, too little water, too much sunlight. A lot of times, like we were talking before about oak leaf hydrangeas, they love the shade. So make sure that you're planting your hydrangea in the right sunlight. You look at the tags. I love this. A lot of people get these tags, they throw them out. These tags are this little cheat sheet. How much sunlight, how much water, how big to dig the hole. Always leave these tags on your plants because it tells why isn't my hydrangea blooming? Let me check that tag when I bought it. Oh, this was supposed to be in full sun, but I have it. It's only getting 3 hours. So make sure it's getting enough sunlight. Too much or too little is, not good. And those are some of my biggest ones. The sunlight, the water, planted in the right spot, fertilizers, pruning. Those are the biggies.
And I noticed too, this season I had some issues with some internal yellowing. So starting from the inside of the plant, kind of spreading out. And one of the things that I did was, apply the liquid nitrogen fertilizer. I actually have it through Petro Tools, and that was a foliar spray. And I sprayed the leaves of the plants, and it was less than a week, because it was about a week after that I actually sent them a video showing the difference, before and after of just doing a quick nitrogen spray on the actual leaves, fixed the yellow. I kept those leaves actually went back to green. They were, some of them that were already fully yellow ended up falling off. But as it was spreading, I was able to fix that immediately. Because we obviously have a lot of issues with heat stress. It gets very, very hot here in the summers. And we have, more than 100-degree temperatures. So what I found too, that's a great trick. If you have the drip line, I run my drip line at 10:30 every day for just 4 to 5 minutes over the hydrangea, over all the hydrangea, and giving them that uptake of the moisture before the 1 o'clock heat sets in completely prevents any type of drooping whatsoever. You can walk at my house and it's 94 degrees in the middle of the day in the summer, and I don't have anything drooping, because I think they love the hydrangea are water lovers. They do love water. And here we go through huge spells of no water, so if you have the ability to have them if you're in a hot climate with the summer, then I do always recommend that people put them on drip line, because otherwise I have a lot of neighbors that have them and they're not on drip. And they just, they don't look as good. They don't grow as quick. They don't, they don't really flourish with having the water. So I know your temperature is a little different. You guys are a lot cooler in New Jersey. Right. But here in the middle in the Midwest.
Right. So what we'll do is I'll do a deep root watering, just a couple times a week, instead of that drip water. So I'll I'll do that little knuckle test. I'll water at the base of the plant. Another thing that a lot of people do is they'll water over the top of their hydrangeas in the afternoon. And this is one of the other most popular questions I get. Why do I have these funky brown spots on my leaves? Like, what are they? And do I, is my plant dying? Oh my God, your plant's not dying. If it looks like this, chances are, it looks like, it's nice and lush and it's got a couple brown spots. What happened most likely, and sometimes it is a fungal issue, and sometimes it is an issue, like you were saying, where it needs to be sprayed with something. But I think for the most part, at least the hydrangeas here, on my farm, if I overhead water in the afternoon and then temps drop at night, it's almost forming like a little bit of these brown spots because of that. Like those leaves went into the nighttime temps when they were wet, and it got some of these brown spots. It's not great for the plant by any means, but like people are like, well, what do I do? Do I have to cut it out? And I'm like, leave it alone. Like if 90% of the plant looks great and you've got some of these brown spots, leave it alone. But a way to alleviate that is, like you said, water in the morning. So water in the morning, the best bet is to water at the base. Sometimes when we have 100-degree temperatures, I do have to say, and I know people are going to lose their minds over this too, I will overhead water to protect some of those blooms from crisping up and drying up, but I make sure that I do that in the morning. So I'm don't do it at night.
That is a wonderful point, because so we had 3 days of 100 degrees here recently, and for whatever reason, it must have rained. And sometimes when it rains a lot, I'll just shut the sprinklers off, shut the irrigation off. I completely forgot to turn it back on. So it went through 3 days of just getting blasted on the side of the house, and all of the blooms of, it's not a bobo. It's the other one. I can't remember the name. It gets really, really big. All of the blooms are brown. Every single bloom is completely brown from top to bottom. And to your point too about the deep watering, I also do that deep watering. So I'm on 3 to 4 days a week, depending upon what the temperatures are here, but I'll do like a 35-minute drip line. And another thing I always tell people is you have to know your environment, because what works for me here may not work for you, vice versa, California, Florida, whatever. Like if you're looking around, so you have to definitely investigate, because everybody's temperatures are different. The zones are different, things like that. So, and there's no, if you're able to experiment with it and learn how to treat your plant for where you live, and like you said, following the tags. I was like notorious for just being like, it'll be fine in the shade, and it's not. That's totally not what they want. So following the tags, not planting too deep. That was another thing I did when we first started planting. Is I was buying all these hydrangea and planting them too deep. So then the soil was filling in over the crown of the plant, and then I was getting just really bad. I mean, it was like leafing out funny and this and that. So I had to replant them. So always planting, at or just slightly above, a quarter of an inch above the level of the soil, and not digging any deeper than what the actual pot is, because then I was making these huge holes and filling in the soil and being like, oh, I'm going to give it this huge little pillow to grow out. And it compressed and it sunk. So that was a big lesson.
Stamp it down right with your feet. Like get rid of some of those air pockets. My foot's like, I'm always with boots, like, stepping in the hole, digging it up so that the roots can stretch out nice, but then compressing all the air out of it first.
Yeah, for sure. Or they taught us too in our Master Gardener course to like fill the entire pocket with water. So like I would take the hose over, dig the hole, no deeper than the pot, put the pot in, put the soil around, completely fill it with water, and then let it drain down, and it will help with that. So, but yeah, definitely, because those air pockets are killers to your plants.
Yeah.
I mean,
and the drainage is a good point too. Like you said, like if you fill that hole with water, and it starts to drain through, you're golden. If you see that it's sitting there, then you're going to have to amend the soil, because a lot of times people will have clay soil, and then like hydrangeas hate soggy feet. So if it's sitting there in that puddle of water, it's going to die after a while. But if you've got that well drained soil, then you're golden. It should be able to run. There's a formula online. I forget what it is. Like if you fill up your hole, and then after like 10 minutes it leaves, you're good. So something like that, but check it out online. But that's a good point.
So I want to also just put a shout. We're going to put some of your links to some of your most popular videos, the things you were just talking about. We'll put those down in the captions. Yeah. So definitely check that out. Let's talk about, okay, so we kind of addressed that. Why do we get brown petals on only some of the flower? And is there any other, or what about the black spots? When you get the black spot with the hole? How can we prevent that?
It's so funny. I actually have a branch in the back room that I saved this because I was going to make a video on it. It's a critter. I forget the name of, I think it might be, I'm going to say the wrong thing. I'm going to say might, but I clearly forgot the name of it. It's like, it's called a boar. I'm almost positive. So I think it's called the boar wood boar. Once again, I'm not sure if that's the exact name. There are insects that will, go into, like you said, like the wood of the plant. So actually, no, sometimes it'll actually just bore its way into the wood. And what happens is it takes up shop there and it goes down further and further. So if you see a hole in the stem, your best bet, is to clip it off. And if the hole is still there, that means that you didn't get, to where the critter's living. So you need to keep cutting down on that stem until when you hit it, it's solid. Sometimes you have to cut it all the way down to the base because that boar is just going to keep spreading out more and more and more. And chances are it's probably that little insect that's just living inside. And then when you do cut it, make sure that you, dispose of that branch because that, insect is in there and it's going to just jump to another branch once it, gets in the soil. So make sure that you get rid of that. So that's a really great question. I get them all the time.
What is your, and we got to wrap it up, but what is your favorite fertilizer? What fertilizer do you recommend for if you're starting with hydrangea?
I have to tell you the truth. I do not use fertilizers. I know how wacky that sounds. I try like a little bit of 10-10-10. I'll go to Home Depot. I'll go to my local garden centers. I'll buy a little bag of this, a little bag of that. I literally hardly ever prune and I literally hardly ever fertilize. So I can't even recommend one in good faith because I don't love any of them because I don't use that many of them. I have a row. I do have hydrangeas that don't bloom that I probably should be paying more attention to. So maybe that will be my project next spring because there are like 3 or 4 of them, out of all the ones we have here that probably could use fertilizer. So, but I haven't quite figured it out yet. How about you? Which one do you love? Because people ask me that a lot and I really am at a loss. Like, which one do you love?
Well, so I can, in the spring, sometimes I'll use a 10-10-10 granular, just like what you said, and I'll put that down. But I have found recently I love using the liquid nitrogen and love using like the worm tea. The worm tea has been great for me for powdery mildew, which I do get on, different. Yeah. So when I spray that worm tea on the powdery mildew, it's the craziest thing. It's almost like it absorbs or like digests the mildew. Like it's much less and it almost goes away. So I'll prune out anything that's really bad, but then I'll spray with that. But other than that, I think that, so all of it is PetroTools. So any of the liquids that I use only PetroTools, like, cause their products are top notch. I love their stuff. So, but yeah, so I think between the liquid fertilizer and the worm tea, it seems to take care of it for me naturally without having to put the granular 10-10-10 that is little balls of chemical. Yeah. So I've really been trying to, because when I started this garden, I was so ignorant to anything gardening. And so I made a lot of foolish mistakes in doing a lot of harsh chemicals and things like that. So I've really been trying to, kind of be more natural. And that's where, those products come in.
I think Rose Tone too, a lot of Flower Tribe members. We have a Facebook group called Kelly Lehman's Flower Tribe Facebook group. And there's like 6,000 gardeners there from all over the world. And I know a lot of them are always, they were great because I was getting like thousands of questions every week and I couldn't get to all of them. And somebody, I think in like Nigeria, like this, like a country so far from us, they were like, is there any way that you can connect us together, the Flower Tribe members, that we can talk? And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so brilliant. So there's a Kelly Lehman Flower Tribe Facebook group. And I think because I'll hop over there every now and then. And I think a lot of people use Rose Tone. And that seems to be like, like a fertilizer of choice for a lot of gardeners. So, maybe try that out. Sometimes I'll do you could do like little samples on different ones and see which one works best. Like you said, in your garden, like your neck of the woods is going to be completely different than someone in Australia, someone in Israel, someone here. So, but maybe Rose Tone, I keep seeing, in comments pops up a lot.
Yeah. And like we said, a lot of these hydrangea, they don't really require much. So if you're going to start a garden and you want flowers in an area, obviously we would both recommend that you start, find the proper size for the space that you're working with and just throw in some hydrangea. Don't plant them too close, which is another thing I'm notorious for. Plant them the proper width apart because they do grow really fast. So I know when you're putting them in and they're much smaller, it's like, oh, I want them to be, but they will be, in a few years. They just are. And I really have not enough good things to say about them. I mean, it's just there's not enough They're wonderful.
Yeah. One of the other, and maybe we'll link this one too, the other most popular video is how to propagate your hydrangeas. So like I've got a row of like Incredible and Annabelle. I think I put in like, I don't know, 10 of them like 12 years ago. I think I have like 35, 40. They just keep self-propagating, and there's like every year there's like 10 more, 20 more. And so how fun is that, you know?
Yeah.
To see
They're just so rewarding.
Massive hedge, like just spreading out all over the place.
It's wonderful. We'll definitely get the link for that and put that below. So let's do one more. I want to just have you kind of run down your social. So if someone is looking for you to be able to find your social, and then, just a reminder to engage friends. It is a brutal, brutal world out there in these algorithms and all the different nonsense that goes on. So any like, comment, save, subscribe, anything that you can do to show a little bit of love really helps, us creators on the other side. So in that being said, Kelly, can you list off your social and ways that we can find you?
Sure. So I'm going to send you a link to my link tree. And if you hit the link tree, all these will be on that one thing. So we have online flower courses too. I made like a few online flower courses that are like super easy to follow videos on how to put in your own fresh cut flower garden and then how to make arrangements like these out of them. So that will be on there. Kelly Lehman on YouTube. It's just Kelly Lehman, and it'll pop up. I think I've got about 300 how to grow flower videos on there already. Cranberry Fields is my Instagram. On TikTok, it's Kelly Lehman Flowers, and then we're on Pinterest. I think that one's under Kelly Lehman, but it might be Cranberry Fields, but that link will be there too. And then we're on LinkedIn, Kelly Lehman's Flower Tribe Facebook group. If you're looking for gardening friends, hop on over there. These people are spectacular. They are the kindest, most knowledgeable group of gardeners that I've ever experienced. So you can check that out on Facebook, and then we're on Cranberry Fields on Facebook too. And I think that's most of them. But like I said, I'll give you the actual link tree. And we have a podcast too. That I only have about 7 podcasts. Yeah, I'm just kicking that off now. So if you like to listen to those tips as you're gardening, then we've got the podcast too. And that's called, I think it's Kelly Lehman, like How to Grow Flowers, something, Growing Flowers with Kelly Lehman, something like that. But the link will be there too. Yeah. So
great. We'll get those all posted in the caption for anybody who is interested in learning more. Kelly, thank you so much for your time. I know your time is so valuable. You have so much going on. We appreciate your time and your knowledge. And we will definitely have to have you back on again to talk more about our beloved hydrangea. So thanks again for joining me.
I love it. This was so fun. I appreciate you having me.
Yes, for sure. Thanks so much.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.